Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you doing this evening? How's your world? I hope all is well with you. I hope things are great and happy and all that good jazz. I have a problem. And it's a problem maybe you can help me with, maybe you can't. You probably can't, because I probably won't take your advice regardless, because that's just who I am. But I have this issue when I get involved in an idea, I can't ever let it go, and then I put a lot of effort into it, and the problem is that I have a hard time turning down ideas. That's the root of the problem. Is Chevee has a hard time turning down ideas, and apparently I talk in third person now. I don't know where that came from. People will say, "I wish I could do this," and I'll go, "Well, let's do it," right? And then it's like, which is great. I love being able to help and do things, but then you get overwhelmed. And so this all specifically ties back to work. In the not too distant past, my boss came to me and he was like, "I'm looking for a way to do solid, easily repeatable documentation. Do you know of any tools for that?" And I was like, "No." So I did some research and I looked at available options, and they're all, just like everything in this world, people overcomplicate things to a degree that is somewhat maddening, right? And so you go look at all these documentation engines where they help you build documentation for whatever, and it's just this, "I does all of this." Like, I don't need anything that does it. I don't even need a tenth of that, right? So I looked at a whole bunch of options for us, and ultimately I was just like, I'm just going to do it. The app that I have been developing on myself, that I was going to make a company with, needed documentation anyway. So, and I have already built my own sort of template years and years ago. Like when I first started web design, I started my own template. I don't use, that's a lie, I do use it. I don't use Bootstrap and whatever. I don't use a lot of the standard templates because they're just convoluted, and I still have this problem. I still design things as if it was the 90s because I'm old, and I will approach a project in a couple of different ways that are completely foreign to people coming up today in CS. One of those things is all of my pages that I generate, every single website I've ever made, will work just fine if CSS is not loaded. And that's just habit, right? Like, I program the page to render usefully even without CSS, because that's how it started. It started to just be this page of text and hyperlinks, and then somebody's just started adding classes and started adding things to make that look better. But what happens when you don't get CSS? Well, in today's day and age, that basically never happens. It does happen from time to time, especially since most people now are using somebody else's styling. So you're pulling down a style sheet from some content delivery network somewhere, and maybe that content delivery network has a hiccup, and you lost some packets on the way, and you didn't get the CSS to load the page, and then the customer's like, "What is this mess? I can't use this." So I still design with this idea that I'm going to use my own CSS, and it's going to be locally loaded, and but if it fails, I want my site to be useful. And so part of the reason I don't use the bootstraps of the world is because it's just this big convoluted mess when all I'm trying to do is make a simple page. If I can accomplish my CSS in, say, 500 or 1,000 lines of uncompressed CSS versus 2,000 lines of compressed CSS, I would much rather work with my system. So I designed this. So this is all to say that I designed the system years and years and years ago, and I've built upon it, and it works really well. And maybe it's a micro bootstrap, right? That renders very specific style pages, and so I thought, well, I'll just make my own documentation engine and use my CSS and kind of build on it to make the documentation a little bit more useful, because hyperlinks and table of contents and all that stuff is not something that you put on a normal website. So I built this thing, and in its current form, it is barely functional. And what I mean by that is, you can take some text, you can take some images, you can put them into the form, and then it generates a useful set of instructions out of that. It does not have the ability to edit. It doesn't have the ability to move anything around. There's no drag and drop. There's no styling. So if you want to style anything, you have to do that afterwards. So it's very basic, but it works really, really well. And the documentation that I made, people love it. Like, this is really, really slick. And so I got informed today that like we need to do this for everything. Like one of the people from another team contacted me and was like, I need access to your documentation thing because I want to make some documentation. And I was like, oh, it's not ready for that. Like, I guess you can have it, but it's not ready. It was never intended to be a tool that was used that way. But as I worked on it at work, you know, it was kind of like my fun project. I think everybody should have one of those. If you don't, like, even if you work at a corporate environment where you're mandated that you write so many lines of code a day, everybody needs to have that project that they can kind of cruise on, that is simple, that is clearly defined, that you can just write code for and have fun with. And it's a good break from the hardship of writing difficult code when you get stuck on something. So I switch over to this little project and goof on it. And I did that for a couple days, and I came out with this nice little thing. But now everybody wants to use it. And that is the problem. That is the original problem. And I know I don't think you can help me with it, because I'm just going to continue to tell people, well, let's just do it, right? And I'm going to continue to have this backlog of stuff that needs done because I said yes. And or somebody said, I wish I could do this, and so I make it happen for them. Yeah. I don't know that anything that I just said is useful to anybody on this planet, including myself, but I thank you for listening. I don't know. I hope you stayed through to this, because my brain is not exactly functioning right this second. I'm still thinking about the stuff that I needed to get done for work on Monday because I made promises. Whoops. And I have a big weekend, and it's Mother's Day this weekend. Don't forget, Sunday is Mother's Day. I don't care if you haven't talked to your mother in 30 years. Call her and say thank you for giving birth to you. You don't have to tell her that you love her. You don't have to tell her anything other than thank you. Thank you for allowing you to survive this long. I'm going to probably do something for my mom, but we'll figure that out on Sunday. Why figure it out now when I could wait to the last minute? Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for being my best friends, and I'll see you tomorrow. No, I won't. I'll see you on Monday. Maybe Sunday, project video, but Monday. Come back. Thank you.
Hey, Doc, wait! I want to ask you something.
Today's random fact comes from Wikipedia. How far is it from the goal line to the field goal post? A field goal is normally 17 yards, 7 yards in Canadian football, longer than the distance of the line of scrimmage to the goal line, as it includes the end zone 10 yards and 7 yards in which the holder stands behind. So 10 yards. Why? That was a convoluted answer.